Welcome to On the Middle East, Al Monitor's podcast on the big stories in the region. My name is Amran Zaman, and I'm Al Monitor's chief correspondent based in London. Violence between Israel and Hamas is spiralling to new deadly heights following last night's attack on a hospital in Gaza that has killed hundreds of more civilians in the 10-day conflict. Protests against Israel are growing across the Middle East, along with fears that the conflict will draw in regional actors, notably Iran and Lebanon. I spoke to Israel's ambassador to Bahrain Eitan Na'eh, its first to the Gulf Kingdom, about the possible impact of the conflict on the Abraham Accords. A former ambassador to Turkey and Azerbaijan, the Israeli diplomat also opened Israel's first ever mission in the United Arab Emirates. So welcome to our program, Ambassador. It's very kind of you to find the time to join us today.
Thank you very much, Amberine.
Amid the fog of war, global public opinion appears to be tipped against Israel, despite the barbaric attack by Hamas that claimed the lives of so many civilians. We've seen this play out following last night's attack on the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza, with Hamas claiming it was an Israeli airstrike, and most people, including several governments, are rushing to believe that this was the case without being presented with any evidence. Critics of your government would say this is because over the years, and especially since 2006, thousands of Palestinians, including many civilians, women, children, were killed in Israeli attacks. What is your response to this, Ambassador?
Well, I promise you that I'll try that other answers to your question will be shorter, but I think that this is a very important question, and thank you for that. You mentioned you went back to 2006, so let me remind the viewers first that the Palestinian PR efforts refer to the result as the cause. We call it reversal consequentialism. So, for instance, firing rockets or at civilians or massacring Israelis will cause, of course, a reaction. Nobody would stay idle, and it leads to, admittingly, to death, and of course to people leaving their homes. That is, in reverse consequentialism, becomes the reason, and not the result of Hamas's action. And I think that when we discussed Hamas and its actions in Gaza, world public opinion often refuses to put the blame on Hamas and asking them to take responsibility for their actions and to the populations under their control. And in fact, that encourages them. The public opinion is with them. People are quick to blame Israel without even checking the facts. We saw it last night. We presented the facts. Public opinion still calling for demonstrations. Public opinion wouldn't accept it. In fact, even some countries were quick to criticize and to condemn Israel, even though Israel had nothing to do with that attack. And if you want me to go back to 2006, Israel left Gaza in 2005. We left Gaza with 67 working factories, with 10,000 Gazans working there. We left greenhouses with the best agrotech Israel had at the time. Shimon Peres was pledging $2.5 billion of investments. And what happened to it? Fast forward to 2023, when Israel is talking about long-term projects like the Gaza Marine, Gas to Gaza. Desalination plants are at work, supplying today, together with natural resources, 92% of Gaza's water supply. Fish farms and other projects, 18,600 work permits, 2,000 at least of merchants that can go backwards and forwards to Israel, border passings, terminals, all been blown out, brutally destroyed by Hamas 10 days ago. So when one shoots themselves in the leg or burn their own house and then say, oh, I cannot walk, or I have nowhere to live, well, they have to take responsibility. And it seems that Hamas doesn't, sir. the interests of Gazans or the Palestinians. It's working as a foreign agent for the Iranians. And one can support the Palestinians, but supporting the Palestinians does not automatically, should not lead to supporting Hamas.
Critics of your government, though, would counter that the Palestinians were given absolutely no political horizon, that there was never really any commitment to the establishment of an independent Palestinian state on your side. So this is kind of the result of the lack of that horizon, that they were left with no other choice but to remind the world of their existence as peace accords were being made with other Arab countries, that you can't have peace without addressing the Palestinian question. What would your response to that be, Ambassador?
I will refer to Hamas's actions in the last 30 years. Hamas doesn't want peace. Hamas was always increased, turned on the flames whenever peace was at the horizon. I remind you the Oslo Accords and the suicide bombing campaigns of the 90s. I remind you the suicide campaigns of the Second Intifada, resulting in the death of 1,200 Israelis, more than 1,200 Israelis, in a series of suicide bombings that lasted for several years. We know who's behind it. We know who sent them. We know who financed them. We know where is the financial hub for all these activities. So to claim that Hamas's actions are somehow motivated by the political course or the political discussions or negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians, Hamas is the one to be blamed for those discussions running to ground. So that's for it. We just saw and tasted what Hamas wants, how Hamas operates, and what Hamas does. These are not the actions of people who want peace. There was no political end to what they've done. It's violence, sheer violence, evil, horrendous acts that spiraling out of cause. There is no cause, there is no aim. It was not aimed at that. It was caused to sow terror and fear. And as I said, it served an Iranian strategic interest to derail the Abraham Accords and the Saudi-Israeli normalization process.
Many say that the Abraham Accords were doomed to failure from the start because they never addressed the Palestinian issue, that they went over the heads of the Palestinians.
Absolutely not. I think that over the years, we tried all kinds of modalities, and I'll be happy to go through it. Last time would not allow. But since 1993, the Oslo Accord, or even 91, the Madrid process, Camp David, we tried for 30 years all different kinds of approaches and modalities of peacemaking. Nothing worked. And amid all that, we had, as I said before, a Hamas terror campaign, again, sent by the Iranians, who had no interest in seeing peace. In fact, I think that the Iranians do not think. The Iranians see any such resolution of the Palestinian conflict as a threat to their strategic interest. The attack on Saturday, 7th of October, was also an attack on the Abraham Accord, on the Israel-Saudi interests, normalization efforts, and in fact on regional security. It's way bigger than just Israel-Hamas. And we see how world leaders, starting with President Biden, who's in Israel now, the British government, British Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, and others, the French, the Czech, and many others, Germans, how they reacted. I think that people understand what's behind, what was the motive. And the Abraham Accords, they were a different approach. That is trying to make peace through in a different way, starting from the outside, moving in. You mentioned that I opened the embassy in Abu Dhabi and the first ambassador here. I spent quite a bit of efforts to try to include the Palestinians in the economic piece, in investments. But there won't be investments, and nobody in his clear mind will invest a penny in Gaza without ridding Gaza of Hamas. So I think that this is the first goal now, and I think that the world saw what those guys are capable of, and understand that if we want any hope for peace, Gaza should be getting rid of Hamas. And then we said that this is what we'll do because we want the Palestinians, and we said it. We want them to live in peace, to have an economy, to have hope. Otherwise, we will not be able to live in peace. But that is not what Hamas represents.
But what about a Palestinian state? You spoke of an economy. Do the Palestinians deserve to have their own state?
I think that Israeli policy since, in fact, starting in 1980, Oslo, 2009, Prime Minister Netanyahu's statements clearly stated what is the Israeli long-term policy. Given that, we have a reasonable, realistic partner. It's okay to talk about ideals and idealism, but it had to have some roots on the ground. It has to have realistic demands that both sides are ready to discuss and negotiate. And I think that what we always said throughout the 90s, the days where I was a spokesperson in Ankara in the mid-90s, when I was ambassador to Ankara, or certainly coming here. What is peace? Peace is to allow us to live in security and prosperity. And without security and prosperity, there won't be any peace. So prosperity we discussed before, who's for it and who's against it. And security as well. You cannot have both together. One cannot negotiate with a gun into the heads, and certainly not under these horrific actions. So we'll do it once at a time, free Gaza of Hamas, and then rebuilding hope. And as President Biden said, at the right time.
Saudi Arabia has already announced that rapprochement with Israel is on hold. So are you concerned that as the war escalates, if it does, that some Arab countries may even downgrade ties? What are you hearing from your hosts in Bahrain on this score?
Well, of course, we maintain very close, high-level contacts, certainly me with my host and my colleagues all over the Middle East. Certainly, whilst we are reeling from what we also happened on Saturday, and whilst the guns and the rockets are falling on our heads, one cannot talk about normalization as of now, but rest assured, I think it's in the interest of both countries. It's in the economic interest of both countries. It's in the interest of the region. It's the interest of the Palestinians, should they recognize their interest. One thing is to have an interest, and the other thing is to recognize it. And I think that given that these events will be over sometime, we can come back to what we were doing before and what I've been doing since I arrived to the Gulf, and that is building relationships, building bridges, and building peace.
Can you give us some examples of what you've done since you've arrived in Bahrain?
So we tried to do a lot of things in the last 3 years, but certainly things I am very proud of is a lot of efforts went into the economic sphere, introducing the business communities to each other, discussing all kinds of economic projects, investments, Israeli investments, bringing Israeli investments and technology to the Gulf, to Bahrain, from agrotech to cyber, from health to anything that can really, to industry, anything really that can give people jobs, hopes, and give and encourage prosperity. We also work a lot with the young people. We send delegations to Israel. I know that you've been to Israel. I think that visiting Israel, seeing is believing, and that those Bahrainis that visited Israel came back with the different views about Israel. There is a lot to do in the field of education, of perceptions, of lowering the barriers, the psychological barriers, to get people realize and understand that what they've been hearing in the last 75 years is not quite the reality on the ground. A Bahraini lawyer who sat in a restaurant in downtown Haifa told me that sitting in a restaurant in downtown Haifa taught her so much about coexistence, much more than sitting in a classroom and hearing a lecturer. Another Bahraini who visited Israel was complaining that she didn't have enough time to do shopping and to buy original Israeli products. So this is just small examples. There are plenty of plenty more about people who want to go back to Israel to study, etc., etc. Shows you what peace can really look like. Where young people visit, go, study, work, train. That's what you try to do. These are the things that I'm really proud about, and not just about talking to the government, but talking to people and making their lives on both sides way better. That's our modus operandi. That's what we try to do if we are let to do it in peace, when we have diplomatic relationships that allow us to introduce this to each other.
One of the prevailing narratives before these horrific events was that the United States was basically dialing down its presence, engagement at least, in the Middle East. And now, of course, today, President Biden is in your country. How would you assess this administration's role so far throughout this crisis?
I think that's from the beginning. And I came to Abu Dhabi days after President Biden was sworn in. So from the outset, we worked very closely with the American embassy, both in Abu Dhabi and in Manama. Here in Manama, led by Ambassador Steve Bondi, who is steadfast in his support of the Abraham Accords, him and his team. We worked very closely together. I can only praise the American involvement, dedication to promote the Abraham Accords in every opportunity that we have. And that is done on a daily basis. So I think that the American presence, here in Manama, it's the home base of the Fifth Fleet. The Fifth Fleet has a base. The home base is in Tampa, of course, but the Fifth Fleet has a big base here in Manama, part of CENTCOM. I think that giving the physical impression and the perception that America, and I think that America does it, that America is here, it has never left, and it's ready to rush to help its allies, and we see it now, but we saw it before as well. I think that is what is important for people here to see. It's in support of peace, it's in support of security, and certainly it helps to deter the enemies of peace and those who try to sabotage what we've been building here in the last 2 years.
Some analysts, and indeed many of your critics, argue that Israel will seek to seize this opportunity to draw the United States into a broader conflagration against Iran, one in which it gets the United States to help it degrade, destroy Iran's nuclear capabilities.
All that we saw since Saturday the 70th, that none of that was by Israeli design. We were as surprised as everybody else. None of us wanted it. None of us wanted this war. Nobody in Israel woke up in the morning, early morning hours of Saturday, and wanted to see what we saw. So I think, reject any idea of anybody to think that this is a kind of a conspiracy. It's unfortunate. We know who's behind it. We know who financed it. We know who trained those guys. We know who encourages them. It's not that we know that they say they're proud of it. So I think this is what we see, and I hope that soon, when we finish what we set to do, rid Gaza of Hamas, free the hostages, we we can do what we need to do, and that is to build trust and relations again.
You were ambassador in Turkey, as you mentioned, and as a young diplomat, you were also the spokesperson in the 90s at the Israeli embassy in Ankara, at the height of the very close alliance that then existed between Turkey and Israel. Ambassador, what is your assessment of Turkey's reaction so far to this crisis? And do you fear that the, détente that we've seen unfolding over the past few months, which saw an exchange of ambassadors again, could unravel as well? Or do you believe that the Erdogan government is perhaps being more cautious this time?
Well, you are reminding me of the 90s when Israel and Turkey were busy very quickly building very strong relationships, bonds, I would say very intimate ones. I remember that in the 90s, we said that the relationship between Israel and Turkey were as close as Israel had with the US and Germany, as intimate. I think that type of relationships brought more stability to the region. I think that if in the beginning people were asking themselves, what are the Turks doing with the Israelis, very quickly tend to, you know what, and this is Assad, for instance, actually it's not bad that Jerusalem has Turkey's ears. Turkey played a very important role later on. So I think that this is what it was, and I think that this is the importance when two such countries forge close relationships and build trust and forge very close economic relationships. You were there, I was there, and we both remembered the free trade agreement that was signed between Israel and Turkey, and it was again updated just recently. Tourism and other spheres of cooperation, including military and defense, which I think helped us stabilize a volatile region. So hopefully that can happen in the future as well. I think that my colleague in Ankara was trying to do just that now.
A very diplomatic response from the ambassador. My final question is, you speak about defeating Hamas, getting Gaza rid of Hamas. Is that actually possible, given your experience in Lebanon, the experiences of other countries engaged in urban warfare with these kinds of militant movements? How realistic is this goal of eliminating Hamas?
We have to be careful with words that we use, and I think that all the Israeli leaders, from the prime minister, the defense minister, foreign minister, heads of the opposition, I think that everybody today in Israel, from wall to wall, from left to right, understands that without eradicating Hamas military capabilities and political influence, we cannot move forward. And this is basically what I'm saying here. Hamas is also an idea, and I cannot control people's thoughts, but Hamas military capabilities, Hamas ability to derail peace, security, tranquility, calm, and to have a political influence and a skin in what we try to build in the Middle East is Middle East that will be again deprived of what it deserves. It will deprive the Palestinians of what they deserve. And I think that this is what we mean.
Ambassador, thank you again for doing this today, and I hope you and your loved ones stay safe, and hope to see you in Bahrain, inshallah.
Inshallah, and thank you very much, Andrew.
And this brings us to the end of another episode of On the Middle East. I hope you found my conversation with Ambassador Na'eh as illuminating as I did. Do keep tuning in and read our coverage of the latest in the Gaza conflict and much more on www.al-monitor.com. Thank you and goodbye.